Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised. Individuals are innocent until proven guilty. Status of any allegations is current only as of filming. On this episode of Extreme Smuggling, the craziest drug smuggling techniques to date. Exclusive video takes you into a cartel's sophisticated tunnel network.
These are endeavors that take millions of dollars to construct.
And go on a high-speed, high-seas pursuit of Panamanian drug runners with nothing to lose. Infiltrate a notorious, supersized Arizona trafficking ring.
They were smuggling heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and large amounts of it.
And meet a dangerous cocaine smuggler in Peru who gives inside access to a $40 million payload.
This is a dirty game. If they shoot at me, I'm going to kill them.
The amount of money involved in these seizures will blow your mind.
The cartels generate roughly from $7 billion to $30 billion a year. Nobody knows exactly how much.
No nation in the world consumes more illegal drugs than the United States. Americans are getting high in record numbers. This insatiable demand has created powerful and violent narco empires who employ brazen, outrageous, and often deadly smuggling techniques to get their illicit cargo across our borders.
They're moving tons of drugs at this moment. There's probably tons of drugs en route to different places in the United States.
Billion-dollar drug cartels use every extreme smuggling method imaginable to transport their deadly cargo. Everything from helicopters and gliders to big rig trucks and human mules. But hands down, their trafficking technique of choice is by sea.
Okay, we're currently on top of what appears to be two launches heading basically eastbound.
This actual Customs and Border Protection surveillance footage recorded drug runners minutes before being interdicted and arrested by law enforcement. Incredibly, 80% of all illegal drugs entering the United States comes in by sea.
Guys, don't turn it south.
To counter this sea invasion, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency uses high-tech P-3 aircrafts. These high-altitude airplanes patrol the open waters 24 hours a day, looking for high-sea drug runners who will do just about anything to keep from getting caught. May 2005, a P-3 crew flying a mission off the coast of Ecuador was on the lookout for the Simon Bolivar, a fishing boat believed to be transporting drugs.
We were suspecting that this boat was carrying a large load, a multi-ton load, up towards Mexico for offload to smaller vessels off the Mexican coast.
Affirmative, boarding team is on board.
Filming the action from 20,000 feet, the P-3 crew contacts the nearby Navy ship USS Jarrett. They immediately deploy a U.S. Coast Guard boarding team. As they approach, a crewman on the Simon Bolivar can be seen throwing something overboard.
Something was just thrown over at 0343 south.
If you see anything go over the side prior to a boarding, that really raises your suspicion level, because normally the captains don't do that. If they start chucking stuff over the side, something's not right.
Within minutes, the Coast Guard pulls next to the fishing boat.
The armed boarding team now comes alongside and physically takes over the ship.
Okay, boarding crew is about to jump aboard the Simon Boulevard. They're on board.
Suddenly, the captain of the Simon Bolivar made a desperate and dangerous move.
And at that point, we see the ship go out of control.
Break, ocean.
He's turning that. He's circling there.
The Navy ship, who's right next to him, sees the ship go out of control. And you don't know if the captain is trying to hit and sink his own vessel because of the amount of drugs on board.
The fishing vessel veered straight for the Navy ship. The USS Jarrett and the Simon Bolivar suffered only minor damage. A search confirmed the P-3 crew's initial suspicions. The fishing boat was loaded with illegal drugs.
12 crew members were on board. 8,800 pounds of cocaine was taken off the boat. It's probably up in the $300 or $400 million range.
Fishing boats can camouflage a drug load. But when it comes to outrunning the law, a favorite choice for smugglers is a fast boat. They've been used by smugglers since the days of Prohibition in the 1920s. Today, drug runners mount 4 outboard motors onto a fiberglass 50-foot boat and achieve a top speed over 100 miles per hour. Fast boats can easily outrun and outmaneuver most of the standard vessels used by law enforcement.
Looks like a bunch of packages in the center hole.
2010, 100 miles off the northern coast of Panama. P-3 FLIR footage captures the literal combat ship USS Freedom's encounter with a fast boat that has all the telltale signs of smuggling.
A multi-engine, running at night, lights out, at high speed. Those are things that we use to identify it as a suspect vessel.
The Navy vessel Freedom attempts to intercept the suspicious fast boat.
You have to remember, out in the middle of the ocean at night is pitch black dark.
We got in a little bit lower and closer. It looked what appeared to be contraband loaded up in the front of the boat.
Yeah, the whole center forward looks like packages, barrels. We're not really sure.
Suddenly, the fast boat made a run for it. The Navy littoral combat ship immediately launched an RHIB, a rigid-hulled inflatable boat carrying a heavily armed arrest team. These lightweight, high-performance Navy chase boats travel at speeds up to 80 miles per hour. As the Navy RHIB closed in on the fast boat, the desperate smugglers took decisive action against the pursuing naval vessel.
This is 106. 106 is making this target right here. Okay.
The go fast becomes evasive and turns hard.
Get close. He's got him. He's got him.
And rams the rib and takes out his engines.
So that boat was instantly disabled.
The USS Freedom took up the chase until the smugglers beached their boat and made off into the dark. But they didn't get far, thanks to a quick call to Panama's national police.
Local Panamanian law enforcement were able to arrest 3 of them, and they were able to seize over 2,600 pounds of cocaine.
The good guy boat is shining a spotlight on the bad guy boat.
Just a few months later, another fast boat breaching took place in Panama. This case began when a suspected smuggling boat spotted the P-3 surveillance airplane, dumped its dope, and made a run for it.
There's definitely a lot of stuff on the boat. Looks like you might be dumping some more stuff here. Yep, one.
Once they know that they have been found, they try to throw the drugs overboard and basically get rid of the evidence.
How many objects? Okay, it's about 5, 6, 7.
We mark the position of each bale that goes overboard, that we count each bale so we know how much was there. So after the mission is over, we can go back to the debris field and recover those bales of cocaine.
The drug bales weren't the only things going overboard. The smugglers suddenly leapt from the fast boat, a dangerous and potentially fatal maneuver.
Another large object at 0921-07948.
The individuals on the boat actually jump off. They're hoping, I guess, that the boat will continue on and safe on shore, and the plane and the law enforcement vessel will follow the boat.
With no one at the helm, the fast boat careened totally out of control.
But indeed, it made a full circle back to them.
Okay, yeah, the people on the boat have jumped out, and the boat was in orbit,
and eventually launched itself up on the beach line, and you can see as it goes into the village.
It beached itself. We'll give you position.
The fast boat and remaining drugs came to a crashing halt in the center of the village. A rude awakening for the sleeping residents.
The people from the village are coming out to see where the boat crashed into a couple of structures.
The U.S. Navy later recovered 89 bales of cocaine, worth $362.4 million, along with 3 waterlogged suspects.
The boat can come in and get the bundles before someone else gets them.
Next on Extreme Smuggling. Billion-dollar drug cartels take their operations underground.
Be careful down there, Bob.
And create elaborate high-tech narco tunnels beneath the U.S.-Mexico border. Moving mountains of drugs undetected into the United States takes money, manpower, and ingenuity, and the cartels have plenty of each. To counter these efforts, law enforcement use aerial drones, highly fortified borders, and ground patrols, forcing traffickers to develop a new and ingenious method of smuggling. Along the U.S.-Mexico border, cartels have literally taken their operations underground, with a subterranean highway that can run 24/7 without interruption. The drug tunnel. The first known narco tunnel was discovered in Douglas, Arizona in 1990. It was simple but effective. Since then, drug tunnels have become much more elaborate multi-million-dollar structures. More than 155 have been found throughout the U.S. border states. Busy industrial areas close to business districts are the ideal locations for drug tunnels.
Otay Mesa is a suitable place for tunnels for two reasons. Number one, it's a commercial zone. There are large complexes of warehouses on both sides of the international border.
The town of Otay Mesa, 20 miles south of San Diego, California, holds the dubious distinction of being the narco tunnel capital of the world.
This is the high-risk area for tunnels in San Diego County. There could be a tunnel under us now.
So you kind of have this perfect storm of factors coming together with a highly populated area, with an industrial area, and with the right geography.
In November of 2010, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, was tipped off to suspicious activities in a warehouse in Otay Mesa and began doing surveillance. They stopped a cargo truck leaving the facility and discovered 3 tons of marijuana. The subsequent search of the warehouse led to the discovery of a narco tunnel and 6.5 additional tons of marijuana.
This tunnel seems to be constructed in the same manner as previous tunnels we found in Otay Mesa, California, using jackhammers. They cut through the soil, which is a soil high in clay content, somewhat self-supporting. No need for shoring at this point in the tunnel.
When it comes to construction, the cartels spare no expense.
These are endeavors that take millions of dollars to construct and months to a year to build.
The more serious tunnels, the bigger ones that we found through the years, are probably built by the Sinaloa drug cartels, and they're very expertly designed. They bring in, I'm sure, mining engineers from central Mexico to design these things.
As you can see, the tunnel has lighting, and it does have good airflow, indicating that there's some type of ventilation system. The rest of the tunnel runs south, down into Mexico. There's a rail system for a cart. These are rails, they run all the way back down to Mexico. We transport the drugs from Mexico into the United States.
ICE is continually developing new ways to detect these underground passages.
We use ground penetrating radar, which helps us find anomalies up to 10 to 15 feet deep. There's not that perfect technology out there, but it's getting better.
As we became more aware of what was happening, the tunnels became more sophisticated, deeper. They became harder and harder to detect.
Nearly 1 year later, on November 15, 2011, acting on a tip, ICE agents raided another Otay Mesa warehouse and uncovered a secret drug tunnel 400 yards long and equipped with electricity and a ventilation system. Federal authorities seized 17 tons of marijuana and arrested 6 people. 2 weeks later, federal authorities acting on an inside tip made an even bigger discovery, just 2.5 miles east of this tunnel.
For several months leading up to November of 2011, agents conducted extensive surveillance in a produce warehouse in Otay Mesa. Ultimately, agents observed a tractor-trailer at the warehouse being loaded with what appeared to be very large boxes of produce. Search of that tractor-trailer resulted in the discovery of approximately 11 tons of marijuana inside large produce boxes.
But this contraband hidden amid a shipment of produce was just the tip of the iceberg. When task force agents raided the warehouse, they uncovered another tunnel. Tim Durst, head of the Tunnel Task Force, was one of the first agents to investigate.
When you're inside of a tunnel and you're looking for evidence or possibly bad guys, you're on high alert. It's not a safe environment because it's narrow and tight and you don't know what's in front of you. You get claustrophobic. It was less than 4 feet high. It was only about 3 feet wide.
This tunnel has upgraded technology to transport the drugs.
I would say they put a couple $1 million at least into this tunnel because they had a hydraulic elevator on the south side, the entrance part of the tunnel. Going into the United States, it had an elaborate rail system with an electric cart that they could drive up and down the tunnel. I drove the cart and it was smooth. It was perfect.
The significance of this rail system is that they could move between 500 and 1,000 pounds of marijuana in as little as 2 to 3 minutes from Mexico into the United States.
It was the largest drug seizure ever in a narco tunnel. Hundreds of marijuana bundles just waiting to be moved.
76, 77.
32.5 tons of marijuana, valued at $40 to $45 million on the street.
The ICE raid shut down the smuggling operation on its first day of business.
The tunnel was taken down basically on the ribbon cutting day, which we believe is a great success for the Tunnel Task Force because they're not able to use their invested resources, invested time to enter drugs and dark commerce.
Once ICE discovers a tunnel and removes its contents, they fill it with cement. But in these times of terrorist threats and attacks, the urgency of shutting down these narco tunnels is not just to stop the flow of drugs.
Border tunnels are not just a drug trafficking problem, they're a national security problem. They're large enough to move groups of people through, weapons of mass destruction through, nuclear warheads through. They're a very big danger and threat to the security of the United States. We are committed to tunnel enforcement and tunnel eradication. If you build it, we'll find it. And when we find it, we'll destroy it.
Coming up on Extreme Smuggling, a cartel's daring and desperate desert smuggling ring gets caught red-handed. Secret underground tunnels are just one radical way billion-dollar drug cartels smuggle their deadly cargo into the U.S. Large amounts of drugs are also smuggled over land in broad daylight. 2010. One of these brazen trafficking operations was run by an infamous Mexican cartel. A sophisticated syndicate using lookouts, stash houses, vehicles, and foot soldiers to transport up to 330 tons of drugs into the U.S. every year. The case began when a local sheriff from Pinal County, Arizona, was conducting a routine traffic stop near the Mexican border. Nearly every aspect of the investigation was caught on tape.
A couple patrol deputies from Pinal County were on routine patrol. They saw this truck on a specific road that's quite common for smuggling activity. So they decided to conduct a traffic stop for infractions that they observed.
Well, that's a good load.
That truck was found to contain about 1,000 pounds of marijuana.
The Pinal County officers figured this was a small-time operation, but a check of this truck's registration indicated a much more sophisticated and sizable operation.
The owner existed only on paper. This ghost person had a total of 5 vehicles registered to him as well, all very similar makes and models. And they realized that, hey, the U.S. Border Patrol seized one of these vehicles off the El Paso gas pipeline 3 months prior, and it had 2,100 pounds of marijuana in it. It became apparent that this was much bigger.
The Pinal County Sheriff's Office and ICE Homeland Security Investigations, whose duties include securing America's borders, launched a joint task force investigation codenamed Operation Pipeline Express. Their first objective was to locate the 3 remaining vehicles registered to the fictitious owner. 2 weeks later, Pinal County sheriffs located a 3rd vehicle and put it under surveillance. This actual footage, taken from a special high-altitude, low-noise surveillance helicopter, recorded the suspect's movements.
That specific pickup truck, it took him into another area in Arizona where some agents observed a transfer of bundles.
The task force held off making any further arrests so as not to alert the smuggling crew. Instead, they put all their resources into aerial surveillance.
Our guys teamed up with Customs and Border Protection, Air and Marine, and they basically flew that entire area. Where those vehicles were encountered gave our guys an idea of the smuggling route that this organization would exploit.
The smugglers' route began in a rugged and remote section of the Mexican border and ran northeast along an isolated dirt road built on top of the El Paso natural gas pipeline, a more direct route to move drugs into Pinal County and then onto the main distribution hub, Phoenix, Arizona.
They were able to identify vehicles were coming out of the desert loaded with 2,000 pounds of marijuana. And in short notice, they basically figured out, hey, this isn't just a mom and pop type operation. It's organized, well-funded.
Investigators identified and tracked 4 smuggling crews.
They would take normally full-size trucks or SUVs. They would strip all the seats out. They would take that vehicle to usually within between 5 to 10 miles north of the U.S.-Mexican border.
Much of the Arizona-Mexico border is heavily fortified, but this spot is so remote and mountainous, it's a difficult area to enforce and is only secured by chain-link fences. This is where the smugglers cross.
Groups of guys from Mexico with makeshift backpacks of marijuana, usually around 40, 50 pounds apiece. Drop their dope into the vehicle, boom, and they're mobile. They'd come out of the brush, they'd hit the pipeline, and off they would go.
These pickup trucks would deliver their drugs to stash houses, a safe location where drugs can be repackaged before hitting the streets. Continued surveillance helped Homeland Security investigations document the main smugglers.
And in a month and a half, they were able to identify a number of people.
Criminal background checks of these smugglers revealed a connection to the mastermind behind the multifaceted operation, the notorious and powerful Sinaloa cartel, led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, wanted by the U.S. government for more than 15 years.
Not just marijuana, but they were smuggling heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and large amounts of it. But once we knew, now it was, okay, what's the end game? To decimate their infrastructure, their finances, their vehicles, and find them, put them in jail, make the evidence, make the case stick.
To take down the entire operation, the task force needed to covertly build cases against everyone from the drivers and stash house guards to couriers and ultimately the cartel mastermind El Chapo. After 17 months of near non-stop surveillance, the task force had gathered hundreds of hours of indisputable video evidence, from pickups at the border to stash house deliveries and redistribution runs. It was time to shut down El Chapo's drug smuggling operation.
These are all known cartel members, all part of the same cartel that we've been dealing with for years.
The plan called for agents to serve 44 warrants simultaneously at locations spread out across Arizona.
We're hitting known stash houses. Stash houses typically have a higher propensity for violence because they want to protect their loads. So they have more weapons, they have more people, so there's a high possibility for violence there.
This lightning strike raid would require split-second timing and absolute secrecy.
All it takes is that one guy hitting the send on that cell phone, and then it alerts 20 other guys, and now we're chasing fugitives for the next 10 years. We didn't want that.
On October 28, 2011, at 5 a.m.,
back it up right here.
more than 400 task force members from HSI, U.S. Marshals, and numerous SWAT teams simultaneously hit 44 locations.
Police! Search warrant! Open the door!
So from the time the first door got taken off the hinges to the time the last door was no less than 2 minutes.
It was the biggest illegal narcotics bust in Arizona history and a devastating blow to cartel kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's operation.
During the operation, we seized roughly $33 million worth of narcotics in the form of marijuana, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine. We seized a little over $750,000 in cash, 108 weapons, a lot of which were AK variants, assault rifles, about 86 vehicles, and we indicted or arrested 97 traffickers.
Operation Pipeline Express is just one example of the sophisticated and massive smuggling operations that law enforcement agencies face every day. Coming up on Extreme Smuggling, the stunning case of a high-flying dope ring operating deep in the forests on the Canadian border. Most illegal drugs flooding into the U.S. enter through the southern border states. Billions of dollars in law enforcement resources and manpower have been deployed to fight this dangerous threat head-on. But in the north, much of the 4,000-mile U.S.-Canadian border is open and unguarded. With only an occasional border crossing, this wide expanse of wilderness is a perfect cover for traffickers transporting millions of pounds of a potent hybrid variety of marijuana known as BC Bud. In 2007, authorities uncovered an elaborate, highly organized, and extreme trafficking ring operating in the dense Canadian forests just north of the U.S. border. It all began at the Blaine-Washington border crossing, when a routine check of a traveler's passport revealed that he was on a watch list of suspected traffickers. Customs and Border Protection officers inspected his car but didn't find any dope. However, they did discover some high-tech equipment.
In his vehicle, he had a satellite telephone and a map of the Okanagan National Forest.
Agents released the suspect, and ICE Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, secretly followed him. 3 hours later, he stopped his car in a remote wooded area and hiked to a nearby clearing.
It was a wide spot in a forest road.
A perfect place for a helicopter landing. After the suspect left the area, HSI set up a surveillance camera equipped with a motion detector. If anything moved, the camera would automatically start recording video.
So we received a lot of footage of just regular people up there camping, hiking through, and we would go through days and days, hours and hours of footage seeing that. It was very discouraging.
Then, after 8 weeks, their patience paid off. This actual HSI recording shows a helicopter offloading several large duffel bags.
It was like winning the law enforcement lottery. We just kept watching the footage over and over again. We suspected the contraband that was being smuggled into the United States was the BC Bud marijuana. In this footage, you see the suspect then run out to the bags, load those bags into his vehicle.
It was not the same suspect they stopped at the border, but the evidence suggested that this was a large smuggling ring. By the time they retrieved the tape, the van had left the forest. HSI eventually recorded multiple drug drops. On tape, and were able to piece together the scope of the smuggling operation. Helicopters dropped marijuana loads into the remote forest. Drivers gathered the drugs and drove them into the city for wholesale distribution. The whole deal coordinated by sat phone and GPS. HSI needed to track down the source of the dope and immediately launched a massive investigation codenamed Frozen Timber. 3 weeks into the case, authorities intercepted a van full of BC Bud up in the remote forest.
We seized approximately 500 pounds of BC Bud marijuana. 500 pounds of marijuana could range anywhere from $1.5 million to $3 million street value.
The top-grade dope wasn't the only cargo that interested the agents.
We obtained a GPS that the suspect had, and in that GPS he had multiple coordinates within the Okanagan National Forest. Excellent locations for helicopter offloads.
HSI set up additional surveillance cameras at all the coordinates taken from the GPS device. In just a few days, they recorded more helicopter drug deliveries.
At first, it became a little overwhelming to all of a sudden see this many types of aircraft and offload crews. We realized we needed to work a lot more to effect the arrests of these individuals.
Where's he at, Mike? 270? Yep.
Customs and Border Protection Air and Marine joined the operation. In this exclusive footage, a drug-laden helicopter, en route to a drop site, flies low through the mountain valleys, barely staying above the trees.
He's coming up this other valley.
He's flying up this logging road. Just into Canada by about 3, so he may be landing for another load. Yes, he may be. Guys, he's slowing. Oh, I got a vehicle on the ground below him, I believe. Hate this. He's going to land. Coming to a hover.
This video captured $1 million dope drop in a new forest location.
The offload side up there's a little bit of there's a guy there. There's a guy there. He's coming down. Slow down, big time. I can't tell what he's doing.
In the final phase of the operation, agents are determined to capture a helicopter and pilot. Then they received an unexpected break when a routine drop deviated from the smugglers' standard operating procedure.
We followed an offload crew to a remote location. Early that morning, a Robinson R-22 helicopter was observed coming into that location and landing.
Incredibly, this pilot got out of his chopper to talk with the offload crew, something agents had never seen before.
They then effected the arrest of those individuals.
The pilots were independent contractors, flying loads for multiple criminal organizations, including a notorious Canadian drug smuggling ring called the United Nations Gang, a criminal gang active in the Vancouver, British Columbia area. Further questioning led to even more arrests.
At the end of the investigation, we effected approximately 50 arrests and seized over 5,000 pounds of BC bud marijuana.
The estimated value of the dope seized in Operation Frozen Timber exceeded $15 million. But more importantly, it also uncovered a major vulnerability to national security and our northern border. Coming up on Extreme Smuggling, we travel to the capital of Peru, where a veteran coke smuggler gives us unprecedented access to his dangerous and deadly world.
My protection is right here. If they shoot at me, I'm going to kill them.
Americans shoot, snort, and smoke more cocaine than any other nationality in the world. More than half of the 600 tons of cocaine trafficked globally each year ends up in the U.S. More than a third of this contraband is produced by the impoverished South American country of Peru. In Peru, most of the cocaine that is smuggled to the U.S. starts out in secret processing labs hidden deep in the jungles. Here, coca plants are boiled down into a paste, which is dried and turned into powder. It is then packed and shipped along the battered roads from Tingo Maria to Peru's capital city, Lima. It's here where a smuggler we'll call Raul granted our cameras exclusive inside access to his risky business. We recorded the tense moments as Raul waits for a $2 million coke shipment to arrive.
You should be here exactly at 2 p.m., right?
Yeah. Mercadería que está viniendo de la selva.
The merchandise is coming in from the jungle. It's 40 kilos.
De la selva. Son
From Tingo Maria to here is just about 14 hours. They'll be here in just 3 minutes.
This is a critical moment for Raul. He makes sure the couriers haven't been followed, then steps out of the car. He's done this for years, but Raul trusts no one and is constantly on the lookout for the authorities.
This is something we have planned perfectly. We just do it routinely, and up until now, it's worked every time.
The couriers may look like college kids, but in reality, they're seasoned smugglers carrying backpacks full of cocaine. The group enters a guarded housing complex where Raul rents a second-floor apartment. He uses it strictly as a cargo checkpoint, a critical phase of the process.
I'm just a little nervous every time because it has to arrive exactly like it left from the jungle. We can't lose even 1 gram. You have to be exact in this business.
Once he is sure the couriers haven't been followed or betrayed him, Raul inspects the shipment.
This is the cocaine. It comes wrapped up with a special tape so that not 1 gram will be lost. There are 40 blocks, 40 kilos. Each one of these is a kilo. In this business, you have to control your nerves. The total street value of the cocaine would be $2 million in the United States. This is a dirty game, and I have to protect myself. My protection is right here. Whatever might happen to me, if they shoot at me, I'm going to kill them.
Raul is not an independent operator. He's a mid-level employee of a large and powerful Peruvian smuggling network, supplying cocaine exclusively to Mexican cartels.
It's a mafia that we belong to here in Peru, but the big guys in Mexico are very dangerous.
After the integrity of the shipment is verified, Raul and his 40 kilos of coke are on the move. He knows that it's risky to stay in one place for too long.
From here, we'll take the cocaine to a boat, and the courier will take the load to just off the coast of Central America. And just as it is here is exactly how it has to arrive there. The cocaine will be given to a Mexican cartel, and from there smuggled to the United States.
The next phase of its illegal journey will take approximately 36 hours, if nothing goes wrong. Raul won't rest until he confirms that the drugs have been delivered to the Mexican cartel. He knows if it doesn't reach the final destination, he will pay with his life. Raul repeats this same process every week without exception, earning him $4 million every month and sending in excess of $100 million of cocaine to the streets of the United States every year. Coming up on Extreme Smuggling, 3 record-breaking busts, weed, meth, and cold hard cash. In the world of illegal drug smuggling, bigger is always better. Giant payloads bring in enormous profits, and narco cartels are constantly creating new and extreme ways to smuggle. Massive amounts of narcotics into the U.S. Cartels have one single-minded goal: get their illegal drugs across the borders and onto the streets. And they have almost unlimited funds to research and create new, ingenious, and extreme ways to smuggle. Law enforcement counters these innovations with every resource at their disposal. It's a never-ending battle where victory is often measured by the size and cost of the seizures.
You're dealing with tens of millions of dollars in potential profits lost. It's got to be a big deal to these folks.
Not surprisingly, Mexico is the extreme smuggling capital of the drug world. And it holds 2 amazing seizure records: $4 billion of meth in a single bust, and an amazing 134 tons of marijuana in another.
The marijuana bust in Tijuana in 2010 was the largest bust in Mexican history.
In the early morning hours of October 17, 2010, Mexican federal police in a Tijuana neighborhood stop a tractor trailer leaving a suspected cartel warehouse. A search of the truck uncovers a giant shipment of dope.
Bulky drugs like marijuana, they're hard to hide, they're hard to conceal in cars, so they'll move those over the borders, hidden in big tractor trailer loads.
Mexican authorities arrest the driver and immediately raid the warehouse. It's the bust of a lifetime.
134 tons of marijuana was discovered.
The 134 tons of marijuana was wrapped, packed, and ready to ship. More than 10,000 packages were color-coded to indicate their final destination.
Looked like it was just about to be transported into the United States.
Authorities put the dope, worth a staggering $340 million, and the smugglers on display in what's become known by many as the Mexican Perp Walk.
The Mexican military will destroy the drugs that they confiscate, and they do this by burning it all.
Another record-setting Mexican drug bust went down in early 2012. This time, it was methamphetamine. Perhaps the most addictive drug in the world, methamphetamine is manufactured in secret labs with a chemical process using what are called precursors, such as ephedrine, a common ingredient in cold medicines.
This drug is relatively cheap to make if you have access to the precursors. It can be manufactured anywhere.
In February of 2012, several anonymous tips, possibly from a rival drug cartel, led Mexican Army investigators to a massive secret lab just outside of Guadalajara. Inside the gigantic facility, they seized 15 tons of methamphetamine, an amount equal to 13 million doses on the street and worth more than $4 billion. Methamphetamine also played a part in another record-breaking bust that went down at a house just outside of Guadalajara, Mexico. But this time, the contraband was cold, hard cash, over $200 million of it. The stash, which consisted mostly of U.S. $100 bills, weighed approximately 2.5 tons. This is the largest cash seizure, not only in Mexico, but in the world. Cartels use every illegal trafficking trick in the book to get their drugs into the U.S., but they also employ extreme techniques to transport the mountains of money they make out of the country. In order to launder their huge profits, cartels smuggle millions in contraband cash out of the U.S. every day and deposit it in secret bank accounts. The methods they use to do this are no less ingenious or radical than the ones used to move dope. Colombia, 2009. Acting on a tip from an informant, authorities intercepted a suspicious shipment of fertilizer in the busy port of Buenaventura and discovered bundles of cash hidden inside.
It just kept multiplying, and it was truly shocking. We couldn't believe it. The whole port almost came to a standstill watching this happening. These blocks of cash falling out of these sacks of ammonium nitrate.
There it is.
It was the largest bulk cash containerized seizure in history.
The money was the illegal profits of an obscure Colombian drug cartel called the Pacific Rim.
They controlled so much of the drug trade, so much of the money laundering, bulk cash smuggling, yet for all practical purposes, they didn't really exist on the radars of the authorities till we began targeting them.
Incredibly, this virtually unknown drug cartel was actually responsible for supplying more than half of the world's cocaine.
It hurts them much more to lose a shipment of cash than a shipment of drugs.
Enormous cash seizures and massive drug busts definitely take a toll on worldwide trafficking operations. But the cash-rich cartels are relentless in their determination to bring illegal narcotics across the borders.
It's still the unfortunate circumstance that more is getting into the United States than we are able to intercept.
From the high seas of Panama and the back alleys of Peru to the Canadian forests